Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Guns.com taking a look at some of the cool stuff that they have in their inventory, like this Colt Service Ace 22. Now this is a 22 rimfire conversion of a 1911, and mechanically speaking, it's kind of like the hybrid of a 1911 and an M1 Carbine. Hopefully that sounds intriguing. So, if we go back a little bit, in 1931, Colt introduced their first version of 22 rimfire 1911. It was purchased in small numbers, a couple hundred, by the military as a training pistol. By the way, the reason the military would want a trainer in 22 is primarily, well, a number of reasons. It's a lot cheaper, the ammunition's cheaper, and especially prior to World War II, the US Army was very stingy about its quite limited budget.
Today's video is generously sponsored by Guns.com. Not only do they have their own warehouse full of cool, new, and collectible stuff, like the gun that we're filming there today, but they also do purchasing. So if you have that gun lying around that maybe isn't as interesting to you as you thought it would be when you got it, or something that you've outgrown, or just something that you need to flip to make some cash for some other expenses, well, consider Guns.com. They have a program they call We Buy Guns at guns.com/we-buy-guns that makes the whole process of selling to them very simple. Just fill out an online form with a couple questions about make, model, and condition, snap a couple of photos with your phone, upload it to them, and they will get back to you lickety-split with an offer for the piece. If you like it, they send you a prepaid shipping label, drop the gun in the mail, and get your cash. You don't have to deal with online auction fees. You don't have to deal with trying to find a good local gun shop that'll consign it to a small group of local people. It's potentially an outstanding option for you. And it means that there's always some new, interesting pre-owned stuff cycling through the Guns.com warehouse for either you to get or perhaps me to film. So let's get back to today's video.
Being able to train with cheap 22 rimfire ammunition meant they could actually do a lot more training than they would have if they had to use actual 45 auto. In addition, 22 rimfire is able to be safely used in a whole lot more places than full power 45. It requires much less backstop, and you can set up shooting ranges like in bases, really close to populated areas or inside populated areas in a way that you couldn't really do with full power cartridges. So this is applicable to rifles as well, but also pistols. In fact, it's largely the US cavalry that is interested in rimfire training pistols, because the cavalry at that point is still one of the predominant branches of the military that's using pistols as an actual fighting weapon. Soldiers on horseback shooting a pistol because they can't fire a rifle from horseback, but they can use a pistol. So anyway, the cavalry is the most interested party in this sort of thing at the time. Anyway, 1931 Colt introduces it. The Colt Ace, not Service Ace, just the plain Colt Ace, is a simple blowback rimfire conversion. It's okay, it has reliability issues. It's a little bit complicated, it's got a lot of extra parts, and it doesn't have a ton of parts that interchange directly with a regular 1911. In 1932, just a year later, they start experimenting with a patent that they were introduced to by a guy named David Marshall Williams. So let's go off on a short tangent here about David Marshall Williams. A lot of people are going to be more likely to recognize him by the name Carbine Williams. He is widely credited, incorrectly I would say, with having invented the M1 Carbine. There was a Jimmy Stewart Hollywood production movie in the 1950s called Carbine Williams that really cemented this meme in the gun historical community that Carbine Williams invented the M1 Carbine. Like the movie came out and everyone goes, oh, well, that's what happened. The movie's not, like, it's a Hollywood movie. It's not totally true. In reality, Carbine Williams developed a gas tappet system that was used in this and used in a 22 conversion of the Browning Model 1919 machine gun, and also for the M1 Carbine. But beyond that gas system, like the use of his gas system, the M1 Carbine was basically done by a bunch of other really talented Winchester engineers. Carbine Williams, I mean, if you look at Carbine Williams' personal history, he was a moonshiner down in the South who got into a gunfight with some sheriff's deputies who came out to shut down his still. His and a bunch of other guys still. They got in a gunfight. One of the deputies gets killed. Carbine Williams gets captured and arrested. He does time in jail for murder or manslaughter. It's not full-on murder, but anyway, he's convicted. He goes to jail, spends some time in jail, As the movie very happily points out, he starts actually repairing the sheriff's office's guns in the prison shop while he's in jail, and then starts inventing his own stuff, his own guns in the prison jail, which is kind of a weird thing for people today to think about, perhaps, that they let you build guns in the prison jail. But they did. Eventually, he's paroled, gets out, and goes to work in the firearms industry. This is also a point in time where convicted felons are still allowed to own guns. That's not that's a prohibition that came after the 1930s. So Williams gets into the gun industry. Colt sees his patent. Colt is interested in this patent, and Colt ends up hiring him essentially so that they can use his services and license his patent for a couple of different guns. And the first application they put this patent to is 22 conversions of full power guns, both the 1919 machine gun and the Colt 1911. And the US military will buy both of these conversions. In fact, the Browning machine gun conversion is a really quite novel, very successful system. A 22 caliber conversion of a belt-fed 30-06 machine gun is a weird thing to envision, but Williams makes it happen and does it pretty well. He's an obnoxious guy. He's not very personable. He doesn't get along. He does not play well with others. But he is a talented, intelligent engineer. Anyway, let me pull this apart and let me show you how Carbine Williams' gas tappet system works in a 1911. From the outside, it sure looks like a 1911. It handles just like a 1911. It's got slide markings over here, just like a 1911. Although on this side, it's marked Colt Service Model Ace 22 long rifle. By the way, there are two versions of this marking. One of them has service model both here. The other one, I believe, has service on one side and model on the other. But you do get a nice adjustable sights on the back there, which means the front sight is a little bit taller, a little bit differently shaped than a standard M1911 front sight, including some serrations to reduce glare. If you look at the ejection port, you'll notice that there's a line there on the chamber, but other than having a little tiny 22 caliber barrel, it doesn't really look a whole lot different. You can see that the barrel doesn't drop. It is a fixed barrel. We'll check on that in just a moment. If I drop the magazine out, it's marked Colt 22 Ace long rifle service model on the bottom. And this is one of those really cool two-tone early style of Colt magazines. The two-tone is due to the fact that the heat treatment at the top is different from the heat treatment at the bottom. And this holds 10 rounds of 22. This follower is angled because you've got the rims and the stacking, and 22 kind of wants to curve. So special magazines for 22. Now this is going to disassemble just like a standard 1911. So I'm going to pull the recoil spring out. Pull the barrel bushing out, draw the slide back to right there, pop out the pin, slide comes off the front. A quick look at the frame here. This is a totally standard M1911 frame. All the changes are made to the slide, so let's move there. We've got our guide rod here. We have a regular style of 1911 mainspring. And the barrel, instead of having a swinging link, the barrel has a fixed hole here so that you pin it directly into the frame. So let's pull the barrel assembly out. Now the slide has been milled away a little bit. It's a little bit lighter than a standard 1911 slide. The locking lugs are milled away as well. This has a 22 caliber breech face in it. We've got a hole there for the firing pin in the top because it's rimfire. The extractor is off to the side. The extractor has to be a little bit different from a standard 1911 extractor because, well, it's impinging a little bit farther into the inside of the bolt face. You can see this is milled out and you got a long extractor in there. This side is also milled down a bit, which we'll get to in a moment. This is the ejector. So it's pinned to the barrel because obviously the regular 45 caliber cartridge requires a somewhat different ejector. So we've got this one added on and it just lives under that spring pin. But the mechanically important element is this guy right here. What Williams invented was called, colloquially called a floating chamber. And essentially, I can take this out. This is basically the chamber of the pistol. So the barrel in there is threaded, or rifled, sorry. It's a 22 caliber barrel, but that's just the barrel. The actual chamber where the brass case sits is in this component. So it's got its feed ramp on there. It's got this little lip, and that's going to control motion. So you can see that this can slide in and out, obviously, and it's really closely fit. It's very smooth. There's very little play in it. What happens is when you fire, the whole brass cartridge acts as a piston pushing rearward, and in this case, the floating chamber is able to move that far backwards. So when you fire, it goes back like that. It stops when it hits this block, but before doing so, it has actually accelerated the whole slide backwards because this piece is resting against the breech face right here. Now, the way to think about this is if you've ever looked at how an M1 carbine works, it's got a gas tappet where there's a piston right at the gas block that moves just a short little distance. It's a little bit farther than this, but not much. And it then hits the operating rod, and even though the piston only moves a short distance, it's moving fast enough because of the high pressure in the barrel that it imparts enough inertia, enough energy into the moving component to fully cycle. So that is the system that David Williams came up with, and it's the same concept that's used here, used on the 1919 22 conversions, and used on the M1 carbine. All right, I can also explain this thing a little better by putting it onto the frame with the slide not on the gun. Now this makes a little more sense. It's long here because it's going to sit on this back existing feature. We've got a little cutout there so that it just locks nicely on there. This is the actual ejector component, and you can see it lines up with the chamber there so that when the case is pulled back by the extractor, it's going to hit that and get knocked up and out of the pistol. Colt starts experimenting with this system in 32. They send one to the Army to test. They're like, hey, you know, maybe you'd be interested in this. We're thinking about introducing it. And the Army basically, well, parts of the Army, the cavalry says, yeah, that looks pretty cool. It definitely looks better than the original Colt Ace. We're definitely interested. When you have them ready, send us some. There's some, like the infantry board, less interested, but the cavalry likes it. So 1935, Colt has the thing all ready for production. They send some samples. I think they send 15 of them to the Army for testing. The Army likes them. The Army will go on to actually purchase, serial numbers known are up to 13,808. Of the complete guns, Colt also would make just conversion kit uppers, and those go out to, I think, 2,670 or so. The complete guns are SM prefix for service model. The conversion kits are U for unit, conversion unit. And the original Colt Ace goes out of production in 1941. From 1936 until 1947, Colt's .22 caliber 1911 conversion is this guy. So, like I said, the military buys most of them. They are sold on the commercial market, but they're pretty expensive guns. The Army was paying over $50 a piece for these during World War II. The civilian price, the retail price for them was, I think, $60 or so. That was pricey for the time, and it's, I think, largely why they didn't sell a whole lot of them. The gun will come back into production in 1978. They do another run of them from 78 until 82, and so you'll find those out there as well. In fact, actually, as of the moment of filming this, guns.com has two of those in stock as well. Anyway, the conversion units are typically a little less accurate than the complete guns because they're made to be hand-fitted. And so if you haven't hand-fitted one and properly, it's pretty much the same sort of project as fitting a national match style competition gun for match use. If you haven't done that, the conversion unit's not going to be as accurate as it could be. The complete guns are beautifully made, work very nicely, and had, they were definitely simpler and better than the original Colt Ace conversions. I should also point out there are people who suggest that this mechanism was specifically adopted because it provided more recoil, which was more realistic. It did provide more recoil. You can see that as a silver lining. At the time when they tested it, the comments were more along the lines of, this works better, we like it, it has more recoil, which we don't like, but whatever, we'll deal with that because of the other benefits that we get from it. So after World War II, .22 caliber pistol training, I think, declined a bit. The cavalry wasn't doing so much riding around on horses after World War II, so they have less need of pistols to fire one-handed from horseback. Anyway, a very cool piece of Colt conversion unit technology and history, a little bit of M1 Carbine going on there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.